Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Well, everybody's keen to get at what the public think about Brexit, but that is a rather nebulous thing. Big surveys tend to harvest the more superficial views that can be put in simple questions. Smaller focus groups give more chance for nuance, but being smaller can be less representative of the population at large. With that caveat, I did sit down with a small group this week in Nottingham, Leavers, Remainers, young, old, left and right, selected by market research group Claret Research for us, to embody opinion across the country. Now, it was a chance to have a relatively structured conversation and to see areas of agreement and disagreement in Nottingham. So, we are here because it is a year to go, exactly a year to go, till Britain Brexits, till we leave the EU. And we just want to know where public opinion is. Let me ask you all this. This is going to be a show of hands, OK? I want you to think about how you voted. How many of you have changed your mind since referendum day about how you voted? 3 of you changed your mind.
Kind of. I can definitely see, for me, it's more about not dwelling on the past. We've left and now we are going to leave, as Prime Minister Theresa May said. So there's no point of thinking of the negatives. You might as well think of the positives that are going to come from us leaving the EU.
Gareth, you voted Remain.
I did. It's probably the only vote I've cast in my life that I've regretted, is when I voted Remain, as I was afraid of the short-term damage that a Brexit vote might do to Britain, but excited about the long-term opportunities that getting out of the European Union could offer. And I had to say that a year on, although there has been some short-term negatives, they've been nowhere near as bad as I feared they would be. But those long-term positives, the exciting end point, still seems just as exciting as ever. So I heartily regret voting for Remain.
Okay. And Anna, you voted for Leave.
Yep.
And you're now regretting it and wish you voted Remain.
Yep. Yeah, there was a lot of things I didn't think of when I was voting. And one of the main ones is the Irish border. Yeah.
And you're Irish, in fact.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm from, we live 30 miles away from the border back home. So, yeah, it's a major...
And you still voted Leave, and now you're thinking, what is going to happen to that border?
Yeah.
I think part of the problem, I mean, I can't blame you for that, because none of this was transparent. When the vote was cast, it wasn't made clear enough exactly what we were voting for.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's the problem. It's the terms of this whole deal have just changed so dramatically over the last 18 months that the lack of transparency at the beginning has changed a lot of people's opinion as time has gone on.
I don't actually think this has ended up playing out much differently than I had anticipated it to do when we went into the vote. Like, as you say, there wasn't really much information, so I found it strange that so many people voted to leave when we weren't really sure what was going to happen when we left.
I think that's the other reason why I voted to Remain, because I wasn't sure, and I said I can't take any risk, to say what will happen, because there was nothing more definite to say we're leaving, this was going to happen, so I couldn't take that risk.
What do you think of the transitional arrangement? Because obviously the transitional arrangement more or less just keeps us in the
I think it's just going on for far too long. It's time they got on with it.
Anybody agree with that? Chris, you're nodding.
Yeah, and some of the things which have been agreed during this transition period, I voted for Brexit, and I'm not happy about at all. The idea that any sort of new legislation, policies, procedures which come during that transition period, my understanding is that we've already waived and agreed to that we have no say in that. That for me is preposterous. I think also during that transitional period, people coming over from the EU will have the same rights as those already sort of settled here. Yes, we have that also as well for if people do move abroad, but I personally feel that there's more of a draw to come over to the UK, and I think we could potentially see an influx during that transitional period.
Right, now look, what I want to do is, I want to know, some of you are excited, some of you are anxious. What I want to know is, I want to deal with your hopes. What are particularly those of you who voted or support Brexit, what is it that you hope will change? Marta.
Britain ruled by British, not by Brussels.
Yeah.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Ian, you wanted to come in here.
Yeah, whilst I agree that I want to be ruled by one parliament, whether that parliament was European or whether it was British, I want one set of rules. No man can serve two masters is a very old saying. But equally, I do think we sometimes lose sight of the fact that those rules that were imposed by Europe, we actually voted on, or our government representatives voted on.
Gareth.
One thing I hope to see when we leave the European Union is not so much a law change, but a diplomatic realignment. I think we've been too close to European countries which don't share our respect for common law and for democracy. And I hope that we're going to be closer to some of the Commonwealth countries that do share a deep historical and cultural bond with Britain.
How important to those who voted leave is immigration? Any of you who voted leave, Catherine?
Absolutely.
Immigration important to you?
It's extremely important. This country is overcrowded, there's too many here, it's costing too much money, and they need to clear them back. If they don't want to work, time to clear off.
I voted for Brexit because I would like to see the net migration come down, which will ultimately, in my eyes, have an impact on our public services and bring the demand down.
No.
Okay. Tatenda.
Most of the NHS is propped up by foreign nurses, foreign doctors who actually contribute to that. We are now
but they're working here. I'm not talking about those.
They are now struggling in that they are leaving. It's the same for the industrial sector. We are going to actually struggle without these people. Immigration does benefit this country. I think the Brexit vote was very emotive and very fueled off that, but we could already control who comes into this country.
You know, like myself, I work in the care sector, doing home-based care, and actually I've done my HR master's in HR, and I can see the diversity there. That most of the people who are working there, they are foreigners. Exactly. Look us looking after the people here who are in Britain. I'm a foreigner, of course. I've got a resident here in the UK. But truly speaking, I can't stand there to say immigration is actually bad. Immigration is actually doing good, and we are doing good. Like part of me, like a foreigner in this country, I think.
Right, so let's do a show of hands, because you've actually had a good debate on immigration, and I've heard both sides here. How many of you think one of the advantages of leaving the EU is we will have lower immigration, particularly from Europe? How many of you think that's a good thing? And how many of you think that is not a good thing? Wow, so actually a lot of you are defending immigration. What is it you fear most? Marvin, what do you fear? You were anxious, I think, at the beginning.
Yeah.
And you voted Remain. Yeah. Is there some... If I asked you to kind of encapsulate what it is that you fear, what is it?
Well, I mean, one of my fears that I had was that a lot of people made that vote to say Brexit and based on emotions without really understanding that there are going to be, repercussions. It's going to impact the price they pay for goods, the services. Not in all cases, but like I said, it's going to have adverse impacts in some ways.
I was going to say, a lot of companies can't, a lot of small businesses can't just afford to swallow the costs. Like, that could be the difference between being a functioning business and going bankrupt and not having a business at all. Like, it's not as easy as saying, oh, we'll just take, don't worry, we'll absorb that. It's maybe for the larger, bigger industry, but for the smaller businesses, that's just not the case.
Let me get some other views. Zohaib, I know you have your hand up.
You see, as a young person currently in education within the UK, as a young British individual, I would just like to say that I worry about me and my friends and how our future are going to be impacted on this Brexit decision. So the economy, let's be real, is going downhill. And that is due to Brexit.
No, absolutely rubbish.
No, you're talking about the long term. But
I am talking about the long term.
Your long term is within the next 50 years, not in the next 20 years.
I don't know what you're talking about.
20 years.
Look at the
why is it then? No. But why?
Still in the EU at the moment.
But why is it? Why is it then that 3 million jobs will be lost? It makes me worry about how that will impact me and my friends within the future.
Right. Now, other Remainers, not Brexiteers who want to argue with the point, Remainers, how many of you broadly share Zohaib's fear of what was making him fear?
I mean, I fear for the economy in that if we leave the single market, how are trade deals going to work? Is that going to come out better for us? I'm not sure.
I agree with that. I think my main concern is that if you have a trade dispute under that sort of umbrella, things are kind of secure. As soon as you leave that and you're out there on your own, you kind of go to the bottom of the pile. I know we're a strong economy, we're a strong country, we have a lot to offer, especially in terms of services. However, you're kind of out there, as I said earlier, in uncharted territory, and we're going to be relying on the World Trade Organization.
But surely that's why we are looking to negotiate trade agreements.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's saying something that I'm concerned about and something that I don't know what's going to happen.
Gareth.
It's the uncertainty.
I'm afraid I'd disagree with you that leaving the European Union is going to have such a bad impact on our economy, because one thing that I personally hadn't factored in when I was thinking about how to vote was that the pound would fall. Now, the pound falling has not been good for everything. Of course, it's put prices up in the shops. But for those with what I'd still consider to be proper jobs in factories, in export industries, in fishing and in farming, in the jobs that, when I spoke to my father, he would always talk about proper industry, actually has made British exports far more competitive.
Let me ask you this. We'll do a little show of hands here. Think about this one. This is a big question. You can be Norway, absolutely tied to the EU, or you can be Canada, more arm's length from the EU and more independent. How many of you would say you'd rather be Norway? And how many of you would say Canada?
Both arms.
So that's a very, very overwhelming choice in this room. You would rather have more independence, but even at the cost of trade with Europe.
It will be temporary, yes. But not long term.
You don't think there will be much of a cost?
I mean, as a country, we voted to leave, didn't we? So, whilst it's not my personal choice, I wanted to remain. But if we're going to do it, we've decided we do it, then we have to do it properly, don't we? And if we've been sold that it should be a hard Brexit, and that's what people voted for, then that's what it needs to be.
And Becky, now suppose that the car industry say, if you do that, we're going to lose our supply contract, the supply chain. That means that the parts for the Mini that come in here, they won't be able to be made here because there'll be a border and there'll be customs. What does that not scare you from that position you've just taken?
I think that it's, worrying again, the uncertainty, and we don't know what people are going to say, but at the end of the day, I think there will be other people we can trade with. There should be, if that's the sort of line that trade takes with us, then unfortunately that's it. We can't do that, and we'll have to do something else.
So there was quite a big support for a kind of more Canada option than a Norway option.
That's right.
Yeah.
One or two of the Brexiteers among you, if we went for a Norway option by some, would you feel that was a betrayal of the vote?
Yes, I feel very let down.
Most definitely.
That would be a betrayal of the vote.
It would be.
Catherine, why would that be a betrayal?
Well, because it's not patriotic, is it?
That's not.
One outcome will be, we're going to put this to a vote. We're going to have the deal, we'll have a deal on the table, we'll put it to a vote, so people can vote for the deal, or they can vote for no deal, or they can vote to stay in the EU.
Oh, God.
How many of you would welcome that kind of vote? How many of you would welcome
No.
No.
Not at all. We've voted.
No.
We've done it. Get on with it.
How many? Okay, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing a no in the room.
It will divide the country further.
Yes. It'll divide the country further.
Yes. We would need to redefine the term democracy if that happened.
Underneath your chairs, the very back, you've got two cards.
It's like a minute.
You've got a Union Jack. Right, so you've each got an EU flag and a British flag, yeah? Everybody got the two? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Who has been winning the negotiation so far? Okay, I think the EU is winning the negotiation so far. We've got a few people saying the Brits have been winning it, but most of you are saying. The second question I want to ask is this. Let's imagine it all goes pear-shaped. Who are you going to blame? Which side do you think will be to blame for that?
Oh, dear.
Okay, so most of you would be blaming the British. More of you would be blaming the British than the Europeans. Why did you say that, Charity?
They didn't ask us to leave. We made our own decision, so we have to take the blame. We can't blame anybody else. So.
Yeah, we can't blame them for the fact that we're leaving.
Yeah, but we can blame by the way they dealt with the negotiations.
Yeah. And that's why because we're cowering to the EU at the moment in these negotiations.
You think we're cowering to
Absolutely.
the EU?
We've already given away too much.
Yeah.
How many people agree with Chris's idea that we've been cowering too much to the EU?
Yep.
So that's quite a few of you think we've been cowering to the EU. Well, look, we've had a very long, instructive chat. We've had a good argument. I think you should give yourselves a little clap, actually. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Voices from Nottingham there was actually part of a much longer chat.